right. So today we're going to get an inside peek into the AI startup world and more with the director of AI at Microsoft, Gabriela Queiroz. Welcome to the podcast.
Such a pleasure to be here talking to you, Ben. As you might remember, we know each other for, I don't know, maybe a decade. So I'm so glad to be talking to you today.
Yes, me too. So you work with a lot of startups and founders. So first of all, so how have the opportunities for startups changed in the past year around I guess let's focus since this podcast is about generative AI. So startups in generative AI space are the opportunities expanding for them?
Absolutely. Especially now, it's so easy for anyone to start and build a prototype or MVP. So the entry barrier for founders or any developer or even like no technical people, it's much, much lower. So I see startups, especially here in the Bay Area, exploding. And not only the amount of startups, but like the interesting things that they are doing.
You catch these startups very early on when they're kind of still exploring, maybe trying to build their minimum viable product. And so, as you said, it's gotten easier. So the barrier to entry is lower, which means you need to be a little more persistent in trying to find your differentiation, right? Because basically, if anyone can build a workable prototype, how do you distinguish yourself?
Exactly. And I'm going to just to step back a little bit so give some context. So at Microsoft, I drive several strategic initiatives that help early and growth stage startups to adopt, build, and scale with AI on Azure. And my focus is mainly here in the Bay Area. Of course, I do some things in a larger scale where I help them understand what Microsoft has to offer, also guide them in solving real pain points using our AI tool stack. Other than that, it's interesting to say that people maybe are not aware is I designed some programs internally where the idea is to spotlight founders, amplify their voices, and showcase their products and companies across the multiple Microsoft channels that we have. It could be coming on stage on some of Microsoft flagship events or at the AI conference, we had our CVP, and she talked about some startups that have been using Azure, or you could be also like YouTube channels as well. The other piece that is interesting for us to touch on is all the feedback that I get from startups when they are using our products, I bring back to the product team. And that can be Azure, it can be GitHub, or any other platform that we have, so we can help shape better tools and experiences for the startup founders. And the other piece is I do a lot of like demos, storytellings, and hands-on engagement where I help startups go from idea or the MVP or the prototype to impact. So always trying to focus on supporting the founder to succeed in every step on the way. But going back to your question, it's very interesting because right now MVP is not enough. So I need to see real use case and I need to see some traction because when they put in production or when they have like real customers is when we see if what they had as MVP or prototype is working indeed.
So, are you starting to see patterns for where people are gaining traction? Is it because they're focusing on a specific domain, or is it because they have some sort of good data set?
All of them, but I would say like if they are solving a real use pain in a very specific niche, so it's not generic, it's a specific pain that the customers have in this specific domain or niche. This is usually where we see them succeed. They are not building something that is generic, but it's something that is solving a real pain for customers.
And as you and I are both in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, and solving a specific pain or identifying a specific niche means something very different here. Because here you have techies. The typical techie founder here builds to impress their other techie friends who may use their tool but will never pay for it, right? So they, as long as it's open source, they'll use it. So, but then you get kind of the street cred because you've got this growing open source project. Your friends are raving about it, but you have no revenue.
Well, I would say this happens everywhere, but definitely here there is a more a bigger culture on that. And that's what I tell founders is like you need to show me traction. Open source is great and it can build. We have like several companies where they started as an open source and then they built a layer, like an enterprise layer or a paid layer on top of that open source project. That's when they started getting some traction and revenue based on the open source project.
Now, since you're at Microsoft, you get to talk to the people at Azure, so you know what the actual enterprises are doing and using generative AI for and what they're willing to pay for. So can you give us some sort of idea of why, you know, move away from the Bay Area, but look at broader enterprise? Are they starting to deploy things like RAG or what is the level of comfort of enterprise in these technologies?
Yeah, they are. I would say they, generally speaking, especially outside Bay Area, they are a little bit behind than startups. Like startups, all they want right now is build the AI agents, like several the arm of AI agents. They want to build several AI agents. The enterprise, most of them are not there yet. There is a lot of like heavy lifting still on the data infrastructure that they need to have in place. Um, and their use cases are very, very much complex. So I see that they are adopting definitely. It's like the same wave that we saw like 10 years ago, probably with like big data, where the enterprise was taking a little bit longer to modernize their stack. Right now, with AI, it took a while for them to understand what is the value of AI and how AI could help their business because there was a lot of discussion around, oh, I can have Gen AI or AI in my company, but what about all the defects or disadvantage or hallucination? How can I deal with that? So I don't know much about it. So in the sense of like they had to be educated first to then use what we had to offer.
So for the startup founders and the Bay Area hipsters who are not enterprise aware, so can you at a high level describe why enterprises need to modernize their data stack at all for generative AI? Because isn't this a miraculous technology that you just point and it miraculously solves all your problems?
Well, that's what we think, but the reality is not this magic. We know that there is a lot of complexity and the data and even like how the data is handled to pass to these models. And there is a lot of like data security. There is a lot of like privacy, a lot of other layers that we startup are not aware, but enterprise they need to be very much in line with what they have. So security, privacy, it's one of the big ones, but also like the type of data. Even like enterprise, the data is not well organized. It's in different teams. Like we when we talk about big companies, it can be we have like several teams using different data sources. They have like different problems. So each one is unique inside their own company.
So a couple of years ago here in the Bay Area, right? So the Hello World and the beginning example was RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So is this now fast forward to today? So RAG is now a well accepted, well established pattern in the enterprise.
It is. It is definitely yes. More and more, it's part of the workflow of like everybody.
It doesn't have to be RAG, but I guess the common use cases that people identify that seem to be further along are customer support, right? So coding. What
Mhm.
and then what else can you? What other buckets can you add to that?
Definitely customer support and like tickets. That's the one of the main pain points of like enterprise. To be honest, enterprise is not my focus, so I don't know all the use cases that they have, but definitely customer support is one of the main pain and very expensive for them to maintain the customer support. So that's a very easy win for enterprise when moving to the Gen AI world or even using AI agents. Like now you can things that were very repetitive, like call center or even people on the chat supporting, you can automate that with AI agents, for example.
So we're having this conversation, and next week I'm sharing a conference on agents in New York. But the impression I get, as you pointed out, is agents, the tool builders are a bit ahead of the tool buyers, right? Is am I wrong?
No, you are completely right. And I talk a lot with startups building AI agents. We have some meetings. We had one a month ago, so in March or April, where we discuss where is this industry heading and what are the challenges that the founders building AI agents are having right now. So there is a lot of challenges. And definitely we have a joke that if you think we are close to AGI, try to build an AI agent and then you'll see how far we are from AGI. Because it's very painful. One, it's very hard. It's not easy to build. And when you want to scale, it's like another level of like difficulty. So everybody's bragging that they have an AI agent that is solving a lot of problems. But when I ask, oh, can you show me an example of like real customers and how you are using, they are not there yet. Some of them, well, the majority of them are not there yet.
Yeah, I think part of it, Gabriella, is the terminology as well, right? So I think that people use the term agent even for a chatbot, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of marketing confusion out there. And then I think the startups are hyping, I think in my mind, this notion of multi agents.
Yes.
I think we will get there, but let's kind of start with simple single agents first. And even with the single agents, I would suspect that depending on the use case or application, you would still need a human in the loop.
Absolutely. Yes, we talk about the human in the loop all the time. There is no, we are not there yet. Even people are bragging. Again, it's the same thing that I've been touching on and talking. They say that they are doing, but when you ask in reality to for them to show you, they are not there yet.
So on the agent front, if I ask you, hey, I want you to give a short presentation, I'll give you 3 slides for an agent conference, 3 slides of 3 examples that really caught your attention and really seems to be working. Maybe it doesn't have to be production, but close to production, right? So what would those 3 examples be that you've come across? It doesn't have to be just things you've come across at Microsoft, but just broadly speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is a company that they are doing AI agent for emails and like syncing with your calendar. So that's a pretty basic but very important, very widely used email and calendar. Everybody uses email and calendar all day long. So this company is building an AI agent to synchronize. So when you get an email, when you someone wants to ask if you are available, the AI agent go and check your calendar and then go back and say, "This is my availability." So you don't have to be in the middle, in the loop in that particular case. But there are other examples that I'm hoping that will work soon, which is and I like this use case when you think about, let's say we have a group of friends and I want to schedule dinner tonight in San Francisco at 7:30, but we have people with dietary restriction, and we want a restaurant that's has a good vibe. Like there is a lot of like requisites. Right now, it would take me like forever to one, find a restaurant that checks all my boxes, two, find a restaurant that has a table for 10 people and has availability for 7:30 p.m. tonight. So there is one company that they are trying to make this automatic where you give all the information that you want and they will do this searching and then booking a table for you. So in the end you get, this is the restaurant, this is the time, the reservation is here, you just need to go.
And so how far away is that restaurant example from reality?
A little bit. I haven't seen it working well yet.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So there in recent months there's been rallying around some kind of foundational protocols, I guess, like MCP, model context protocol, right? So and then now Google has this A to A, right? So which is fairly new. But even in the MCP case, I like that people are excited and they're building all these MCP servers. But someone asked me the other day, "Hey, can you send me a list of kind of vetted MCP servers? The ones that you are comfortable, hardened, and things like that." I think if it comes from the company itself, right? So whatever company, here's an MCP server, fine. But there's thousands of these MCP servers, and I've spent enough time in computer security to be wary around this sort of thing. And we already have kind of these software supply chain issues around Python, and now we're gonna have introduced this thing, which is, I mean, I guess it's just like the early days of the internet, right? So all these websites, you don't know, it's just par for the course. So do you have any? What's your sense around MCP? Is it really taking off, or is it a temporary fix?
That's a great question. I feel like there is no standard right now, and it's too early to say
That
this
this is it.
is it's too early. And there is, as you were saying, there is the Google one, IBM created something called ACP, and then we have like some variations. So we as industry and thought leaders, we are discussing this. Are we there yet? Is this a standard? What are the standards? That's a discussion that it's ongoing. I don't think there is a answer right now. And because this field is evolving so fast, probably in a few months, something else will come and will be the next new thing, right?
Right. Yeah. 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 It's very much like the internet and the standards that emerged out of there. So right. So you can make it formal, go through the W3C, but then you're gonna have to have like thick skin and fight it out among different companies to arrive at a consensus. And but the other approach, based on the internet days, is just to go build and grow it, and somehow it becomes, I guess the notion would be, it's like an empirical open standard, right? So it's not a W3C open standard. It's just by sheer number of people who are using it, it becomes the standard, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. Yes.
A lot of what we've talked about obviously does not depend on data modality, but implicitly we're talking mainly about text, right? So are you starting to see production or near production use cases of some of these multimodal foundation models, right? So involving voice, video, images.
Yeah. We see some use cases on multimodality, definitely, which is more complex. They call like you have the LLM, you have the SLM, you have the VLM.
Talk about data strategy, right? Now you're going to have to expand your data strategy to all these different data types, right? So,
Exactly, which is very hard
yeah, yeah.
because
Data privacy in a 3 hour long audio, right? So
yeah.
someone might blurt out something in there, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I was going to say something. You were talking about the slides, and I didn't answer that. If I had three slides, first of all, about to talk about AI agents. First of all, I would try to get everybody on the same page. What is an AI agent is, and if you ask 10 people, they will all come with different definitions of what an AI agent is. If you go through all the big companies, they all have also like their own AI agent definition. So I would set the stage saying, this is the definition that we have for AI agent or that I have for AI agents, where is a system that can take action on your behalf. That would be the very small definition. Then I would come and say what I told you. If you think we are close to AGI, try to build a AI agent. So kind of like provoking the audience a little bit of like, it's not easy. It's very very hard to have an AI agent working well in production. And then the third one would be start with one AI agent and not with several AI agents because the whole orchestration, how they work together, it's a very painful process. So we start small, try to solve a particular issue that you are having, and then you can scale. But sometimes people want to do the other way around. They want to start from the beginning, building several AI agents, and the win is going to be so far away. So go with one, get some win, and then you can rethink about building more.
yeah, it's not. I mean, orchestration, right? So orchestration of one agent is one thing. And by the way, a lot of people in this space throw around the term orchestration, and when I tell them, right, no, look, in data engineering the term orchestration means something very specific, right?
Yes.
So even for one agent, there's a lot that goes into it. And then now you're talking about multi agents. So there's orchestration, but there's communication too between multi agents, right? So an agent may withhold information from another agent or may ignore an input that one agent sends it, or it may not understand exactly what the other agent is saying, right? So there's orchestration, there's communications. That's why for now, stick with one agent, get that done, and then move forward. Hey, one question I want to ask you is, of course, the big thing in the foundational model space is multimodality, but also reasoning, right? So, this reasoning, what have you seen that reasoning has opened up for some of these startups? Like, what applications really rely on a reasoning enhanced model as opposed to a non reasoning model? Because reasoning is great, but obviously the inference is more expensive. It's slower, it's more expensive, right? So always the question is, what model should I use? What foundation model, and can I get by with a model that doesn't reason, right? So
And that's a great question. I haven't seen any startup on my world using reasoning yet. And
as a must have,
as I'm yeah, and probably because of like what you were talking about. It's very expensive.
it's slower.
It's slower.
Yeah.
And startups, they again, they need to see wins fast. So they need to go to the markets. I would say same thing. Go with the one that it's cheap.
By the way, the
cheap.
cost is not an issue because they just ask you for more free credits. Right?
Well, the free credits, there is always the limit. It's not forever. So even if you have free credits, you are going to be getting to the limits very, very fast. But it's not even the cost, but also like the process and the waiting. How much? What is the trade off? So you have to have trade offs. But I haven't seen any startup talking, at least with me, about using reasoning on their product or any piece of the product that they are building.
So obviously the sound advice for anyone building anything in generative AI from simple to multi agents is to be model agnostic, right? So in other words, design what you're doing so that you can either use multiple models or switch models back and forth. So with that said, we now have these open weights models that are becoming a lot more competitive, right? So last year we had basically one family of open models that seemed to be competitive, Llama. Now we have Quen and DeepSeek, right? So in fact, DeepSeek and Quen are their cadence of release is insane, right? So
Yes,
every 4 months they have a new model. Meta actually is a bit too slow in my opinion. So are you seeing more and more startups opting for open weights?
definitely. But also, like they need to be again very careful when they are using those open weights or open models because of the security. So, but I see a lot of companies using DeepSeek. They changed to DeepSeek that they are using DeepSeek as a choice of model, and I asked them, "How about the security?" So that's my provoking question to them.
Yeah. I mean, I think I actually I'm about to publish an article about this next week about navigating the nuances of these open weights models, right? So, particularly since this week I walked around the RSA conference, so I talked to a lot of security people, right? So, they're security people by definition are a lot more careful, so they're very careful around these, particularly the Chinese open weights models. But then the more I drilled down around it, I think the more I became convinced that the issues are not Chinese specific; they're more open weight specific in some ways, right? So for example, in the open weights world, you can have derivative models, right? So I release, I don't know, Llama or Gemma, and then someone starts forking it, and then suddenly you have thousands of different variants on Hugging Face. So there's proliferation of derivatives, and then who's vetting the derivatives, right? And so if the proprietary models obviously have a lot more control around the derivative models. In fact, they can control exactly who can do that, right? But and then there's supply chain risks, but then that the supply chain risks are not unique to the open weights models because everyone relies on the Python ecosystem to some extent. and and anyone who's installed any one of these Python libraries knows that you install one, it seems to be installing 50 other libraries underneath you, right?
Yeah, and you know the thing that you are talking about, the derivative and people forking and building on top. Again, this is something that we have seen maybe in a smaller scale throughout the years, but we have seen with product as well, or like people building products on and being profitable on top of like open source projects. How many companies we've seen in the past during the ML explosion that they were building on a fork of a Python project or several Python libraries that were open source and they were being profitable.
And then with the Chinese open weights models, right? So there's the notion of the weights themselves or the weights a security risk. And as best I can tell, I talk to a bunch of security people who've done scanning around these things.
These
And
models.
yeah, yeah, there's nothing inherently insecure about the weights. They're just serialized pieces of information that you can peer under, right? So there might be architectural differences between the models, but nothing inherently insecure about the weights. So on the other hand, if you're using one of these Chinese open weights models in their hosted API, well, then that's a different issue because they may have to kind of turn over that data to the Chinese government, right? So, but if you're to deploy it on prem, you can use one of these scanners now that the security companies are offering for these weights. Then I think that you're probably generally access to the weights is not the most common attack. Actually, I mean, honestly, prompt injection is even more common than
Yeah, or you can use, companies like Microsoft. We have DeepSeek R1 available on the Azure platform, but the difference is that it went through this very rigorous red teaming and safety evaluation, so automated assessments of the model behave, extensive security reviews to mitigate any potential risks. So that's the difference. So when you are using on a platform that did this all mitigation for you, then using from straight from the source. That's the difference. One of the difference.
and this is a good point because basically there are differences in terms of alignment and alignment checking and red teaming between maybe the Western and Chinese companies, right? So, I mean, you may want to get a version of them that have gone through more rigorous red teaming and alignment. Just because, especially if it's a user facing application, you don't want it to spew something toxic because that might not be as rigorous as you would expect from some of these other Western teams, who, by the way, actually are also kind of are starting to cut corners around safety and alignment. But that's a topic for another podcast. So, in closing, I guess you've been around technology for a long time, so are there any parallels between what you're seeing now in generative AI and what we saw in big data and data science?
Uh, it's similar, but again, the scale and the velocity are different. Now everybody's using AI, everybody's using Gen AI. There is a lot of like more resources and accessibility. And with all the tools that we also have available, like Lovable and Replit and other tools, it makes the barrier to entry easier. But I feel it's the same.
The hype cycle is the same. If you remember all the stories around big data and data science, data scientist is the sexy new job, right?
Exactly.
But as you point out, the level of accessibility is much more now, which means that there's definitely a lot more stories and a lot more excitement, right?
Absolutely, and it's easier. It's easier, and like back then, it's like we only have a few options. Like when we were talking about big data, we were talking about Hadoop, and then we were talking about Spark, uh, and it was not like 100 different.
And both of which are not accessible to the general public, right?
Yeah, exactly, not accessible. So, but it's again, it's similar in that way. There is an explosion. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody wants to implement, but they want the newest one. But sometimes you don't need. Like back then, people didn't need Hadoop or like MapReduce or Spark if they didn't have lots of data. Right now, you don't have to be using the brightest or the best benchmark LLM model to create something that's meaningful. Um, so you can use maybe a small language model or a model that is not like as big.
Look, Gemini on my iPhone is free.
Well, yes, absolutely. And you can use copilots, you can use OpenAI, you can anyway, so there are other well, but you can use free until you reach a point where you have to pay.
Yeah.
Nothing is free.
Yeah. 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 And with that, thank you, Gabriela.
Of course. Thank you so much, Ben.